Hello everyone and welcome to another incredible game from round 3 of this year's US Chess Championship. It is Niemann versus Leinier, Dominguez, Perez, and they've played each other 3 times so far, and all 3 games ended in a draw. But in the previous US Chess Championship, Leinier finished a full point ahead of Niemann. He finished in shared 2nd place, Hans finished in shared 3rd place, and Leinier finished without losing a single game. Hans had 3 losses, but okay, he also had 3 wins, so it was a pretty crazy event for him. But this game, it's really wild. Hans is much stronger than he was last year. Leinier is always extremely strong, so let's see what happened in this one. Hans with white opens with pawn to e4, and Leinier replies with pawn to e5. It's going to be a fairly theoretical opening with, well, a lot of moves already seen before. We have knight f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. The Italian game is on the board. We have bishop to c5, the Giuoco Piano, and now castles kingside. Usually we see the instant c3. Sometimes we see the Evans Gambit, sometimes we don't. But here, castles kingside. We have knight to f6, d3 and pawn to d6. We've transposed into Giuoco Pianissimo, c3, castles, and rook to e1. We have pawn to a5. Often I like to remind you, if knight to g4 going after the f2 pawn, that rook to e2 is a perfectly fine move, and you can play it, and later on you will kick away the knight, and you can even double rooks on the e file. The rook on e2 could be very useful for the rest of the game even. So instead, pawn to a5, we have pawn to h3 and pawn to h6. Knight b to d2, bishop to e6 attacking the bishop here, and bishop to b5. And now we have this very rare move, bishop to b6. Usually queen to b8 is the idea, going for queen to a7 to put pressure on f2. But here, bishop to b6 is incredibly rare, but it has been played by extremely strong players. Like Ding played it, Hikaru played it, Duda played it, Vidit played it. So it can be done, and I think it's mainly aimed at confusing your opponent. So okay, knight to c4, putting pressure on that bishop, and now look at this, bishop back to c5. Very cool move. Point being that, well, it's hard to decide on bishop to a7, because why would you play bishop to b6 in the first place? So bishop to c5, and now comes bishop to a4, and this is, it comes with a trick also, because the knight on c4 is a target. Let's say you just continue development, you play bishop to e3, then all of a sudden knight a7 puts pressure on your bishop, and you have to, trade it down. If you move the bishop, then b5 already you're just lost. So instead, after bishop c5, the immediate bishop to a4, and now bishop captures on c4, d captures, and there is a game where knight to h7 was played. Here, knight to h5, and it is now, as of move 13, that we have a completely new game. And Hans says, okay, well, that is very nice, I'm not very impressed, and plays pawn to g4. Kicks away the knight, and well, okay, you could put it on f4, but it doesn't really do all that much. You're just gonna capture. So knight back to f6, and Hans strikes with pawn to g5, and all of a sudden we have a very aggressive setup. H captures, we have bishop captures, now pinning the knight, and queen to c8 unpinning, even inviting bishop captures on f6. The problem is bishop captures on f6 would not be met with g captures, but rather with queen captures on h3, and this is now, well, a weird position. You have to worry about many things, but also queen to g3 it will be a possibility, as the f2 pawn will be pinned. So there's really not a good move if you play something like bishop to g5, rook 8 to e8, and then the rook comes into the game, and then you just get checkmated, or you suffer severe material loss. So that's the idea. So instead, the immediate king h2, we have knight to h7 attacking the bishop, and rook to g1. Hans says, you are welcome to capture. I'm just going to double rooks on the g file and go after your king. We have queen to e6, rook to g2. The rook will be very useful here, guarding the f2 pawn, and also it's a nice rook lift for the doubling of your rooks. We have knight to e7, bishop back to d2, and knight to g6. We have queen to e2, preparing to bring the other rook to g1, and now queen to f6. Like I said, knight to f4 will be met with the immediate capture, and also if you do this, for example, captures and captures, then bishop c2, and once e5 is played, the bishop comes alive. It's going to be Very hard to defend. So he prepares it. Leinier plays queen to f6. Now the f4 square is covered sufficiently. But now rook to g4 by Hans, saying, nope, that knight is not landing on f4. And I'm still going to double up on the g file. So c6 and rook 8 to g1. And now king to h8. We have bishop to c2. And now bishop back to b6. It's as if Leinier cannot decide whether the bishop belongs on b6 or on c6. We have rook 1 to g2. Saying, okay, let's further improve the position, make f2 less of a target, and now bishop to d8. We have pawn to c5. You could also play h4, h5 right away. Hans decides to play pawn to c5, and it's a very nice, straightforward positional idea. You have a double c-pawn, and your opponent has a beautiful center, so why not, you know, give up that pawn to destroy your opponent's center. D captures on c5, and now pawn to h4. Leinier goes pawn to c4 at, well, limit the mobility of Hans's queen side, but also the pawn cannot be captured as the queen is stuck here defending the knight on f3. Pawn to h5. Chasing away the knight, we have knight to e7, and now rook captures on g7. And while usually it's a good idea to give up your queen for 2 rooks, here it's really not because of Leinier's undeveloped queen side. If you trade here, let's say captures, captures, and captures, there's knight captures on e5. And now once these bishops come alive, you're not going to be able to defend. Like play some like bishop to c7, bishop to f4, blocking some like, knight to f6, h6 with check, king to h7, queen f3, and already you cannot find a move here for black. If you move the rook, then the f7 pawn falls. If you first capture the knight, then okay, you don't have to worry about the f7 pawn, but now this knight is hanging, and if you move that knight, well then bishop to d4, and now once this pawn is pushed, the king will get checkmated. So something like that. So instead, after rook captures on g7, rook g8, it is by far the best move for Leinier. And now Hans goes back, rook to g3. Even though rook captures on g7 on h7 is a fine attempt, rook to g3 is more precise. But still, after I'm just going to show it to you because it's a lot of fun. Knight g5 check. I mean, if you're not ready to give back that rook, let's say queen captures on c4, going after the f7 pawn. Okay, you could defend with rook here, bishop b3, and now you will capture on f7 and just enjoy a much better game. But yeah, rook to g3 is the better idea. We have pawn to b5 now defending on c4, and now if Leinier can survive this and keep the pawn on c4, he's still very much in the game, but Hans will not allow that. Knight to g5, knight captures on g5, we have bishop captures, queen e6, and queen to f3. And here, what do you play? Leinier, you have to defend against bishop to f6 check, of course. So Leinier plays knight to c8. Now the bishop defends, and the queen defends the f6 square. But there is a problem. The position is now completely winning for Hans, and there are many ways to do that, but one is particularly fun. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the best move for Hans in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on also being Hanstoppable. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to f6 check. The very move you tried to prevent is the move that will be the cause of your demise. Now, okay, the king is in check. You can't really move if you can play king to h7, but then look at this. Rook to g7 check, rook captures. Now you either go under the mask of the rook, or you go to h6, and then a nice queen e3 check will be checkmate. So you can do that. So after bishop to f6 check, you have to capture. Bishop captures, but now rook captures on g8 with check. King to h7, and now again, well, there are many nice moves like queen to g3 or even rook to f8. Hans plays the nicest one, rook to e8, and he was in this position on move 36 that Leinier, Dominguez, Perez resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The queen is hanging. If you capture the rook, it's a fairly straightforward checkmate. Queen f5 check, king to h8, queen captures with check, king h7, and queen to g7 will be checkmate. And if you don't, well, what else do? You could move the queen somewhere like d6. Also, you have to defend that bishop. But now it's a matter of queen f5 check, king to h6, and rook to g6 check. Where if the rook is captured, queen captures is checkmate. So king back to h7, and now you're just going to capture some windmill action before you checkmate the black king, king g7. and now a nice pawn to h6 will be checkmate, as the rook is covering the back rank. So yeah, very, very impressive game by Hans, although last year, yeah, Leinier finished a full point ahead of Hans. Now Hans actually defeats Leinier, who finished last year's US Chess Championship undefeated, and Hans is now one of the leaders of the tournament. Okay, it's still round 3 and it's very, very early, but yeah, these are the standings with 2 points. Hans Niemann, Wander Liang, Wesley So, Fabiano Caruana, and Sam Sevian. With a point and a half, Sam Shankland, Abhimanyu Mishra, and Grigori Oparin. And with 1 point, Levon Aronian, Leinier, Dominguez, Perez, Christopher Yu, and Ray Robson. So those are the standings so far, and I will keep you guys informed. Probably if I show more games from a round in a day, then I'm going to show the standings after I show you the last game of the round. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Welcome Atlas Wilton, Jack Ingram, Ranko Djugashevic, Ivan Sterling, Just van Vert, and Gianpaolo Londono for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.